following the crowd is what is causing a lot of barbers to fail. So many barbers just literally follow the crowd. What is everybody else doing? That's what I'm going to do. That's why you'll go to a street and you'll see 10, 15 barbershops all side by side. That's because one barber came, opened up, found a good spot. Another barber came and said, hey, I'm going to open up there as well. Another barber did the same thing. And now you got like 10 barbershops on the same road competing with each other. Now let's make it clear. You can still run a successful business competing with the crowd, with everybody else. But I'm always like, why doesn't one of those barbers, or especially the last ones to come, have thought to themselves, okay, there's 9 barbershops already here. Maybe this road doesn't need another one. What about I go and find somewhere where the demographic of people I serve are there, but there isn't a barbershop? Basically, finding a gap, filling the gap. And that's what we're going to talk about today on another episode of the SliderCuts Barber Business Podcast, where I talk all things barbering, business, and in between. Let's get straight into it. I'm going to tell you 2 major things that I have done in my career that have been massive, major, enormous in my career. That have been 2 like points where it's like, whoa, the business went from here all the way to there. From these 2 simple things I did. And this was not following the crowd. The first thing was around 16 years ago, maybe 17 years ago. I set up a website for myself. I was a barber cutting out of a chair from a barbershop. And I said, you know what? I'm a business. Businesses have websites. So I said, I should have a website. So that was my reasoning behind it. So I set up a website. But do you know how many customers I got from that website? Even though my website was only like 1 page. Well, initially it was only 1 page. Even when it was complete, I only had about 3 pages, maybe maximum 4. And I think that's even stretching it. I think it was only 3 pages. Information, pictures, location. I think that was really about it. But the first website, when there was a holding page, was only 1 page. It had my name, my number, my address of where I worked. And that was it. I got customers, it felt like weekly from that website. And you know why? Because no other barbers had websites. So I was competing with no one. So whenever anybody would whenever anybody would type in London Black Barber, I would come up. If you typed in barber, I would come up. Because there wasn't really anyone else there. I mean, we had the big barbershops which had websites, but most barbershops didn't have websites. Individual barbers didn't have websites. And it's funny because I was cutting a client this morning and I was telling him this story. And he said to me, oh, that's funny because that's how I came to you. I typed in Black London Barber. And we're talking about last year. So even up to today, people are still typing in that search, because when people are looking for people that can cut Afro hair, they say, oh, Black London Barber, because I'm in London and they're looking for a barber and they're looking for a black barber. Now, another thing you could type in is Afro London Barber. Whatever the case is, because there's no one else out there with websites now, especially back then, I had no competition. So I was just getting so many clients from that basic website. And that wasn't following the crowd. That was finding a gap, even though I didn't know it was a gap. I was literally, because I can't take credit for it and say, you know what? I saw a gap in the market and I said, yeah, no one else has a website, so I'm doing it. I'd be lying if I said that. That's not what happened. But because I was thinking like a business, I made business decisions. So that's the first thing that, from that moment there, just elevated my business. The second thing, and there's been plenty of things to make it clear, but I'm just naming 2 things today. The second thing was lockdown. Lockdown was a hard time for so many people. And during that time, all the barbershops were closed. There were still some barbers, hovering around doing underground trims, but nobody was live really. All the shops were closed, barbers were at home. So content from the barber industry went to 0. There was nothing out there. But during lockdown, bar like I think 2 or 3 days, through all the lockdowns we had, the first lockdown, the second lockdown, the third lockdown, I posted basically every single day. Do you know what I did? I was taking my old videos that I'd recorded and I was just remixing them and changing them up and just putting out content, as well as creating new content. I was doing sketches, I was doing sketches if people remember. Shout out to the people that remember the lockdown sketches. Like I was doing a sketch when the guy was outside, and he exceeded his 1 hour exercise time and the police officer was chasing him, and I was doing like random sketches out there. Also, I did things like, there was a time when I was out, and shout out Lawrence Okoli, I was out running and he was out running and he saw me and he started chasing me down saying he wants a haircut, he wants a haircut, he wants a haircut. And I turned that into a sketch. It wasn't even a sketch, it was just what happened. He saw me running, he chased me down saying he wants a haircut. And then he started getting annoyed, sending me voice notes like, listen, I need a haircut, I need a haircut. I started putting those things online, creating sketches out of them saying, look, this guy won't leave me alone. So basically I was posting every day, finding something to post. When we came out of lockdown, I can't tell you the percentages, but what I would say is the volume of clients, of new clients that SliderCuts Studios got was out of this world. And they were all saying, during lockdown, they were watching my content. They were watching their haircuts I was putting up. And they just kept on saying to themselves, I can't wait till lockdown is over because I'm going to go to that shop to get a haircut. So while all the barbers were not posting, the barber industry went quiet. I was posting daily, which meant that I had all the attention. I was not competing with anybody. So that when the shops open up again, all these people that have been watching me for months said, yep, shops are opening up, we're going to SliderCuts Studios. We were already a busy barbershop, but at that moment, it's just like, whoa, what happened? And obviously, after lockdown, all the barbershops for the first few weeks were busy, but it was more than that for us. It was like the next few weeks, even like busy, next month busy, 2 months busy. And it's just like, there was just a flood of new clients that had come and they were all saying the same thing. We were watching your content during lockdown. And you know what it was? It was like that, like dessert. You want dessert, you're really fiending for that dessert, but you can't get it, for a period of time, you're not allowed it. But then there's someone online who keeps posting these desserts and they look amazing. And you're like, oh my goodness, when we're allowed to have dessert again, I'm going there. But you already have a dessert place you go to. So why are you going to this place here? Because this place grabbed your attention. And without even knowing it, what I did was I converted a bunch of people to clients without even cutting their hair, because all the attention was on me, because all the other barbers were not posting. And this is what I'm talking about today. The importance of filling a gap, not always just following the crowd, finding what other people are not doing. And to make it clear, like I said earlier, you can make a success out of your career from following the crowd. And I do believe that, when there's trends, you should jump on the trends and so on while everybody else is doing it. Cool. But there's a space that a lot of people are not occupying. And that's the space where nobody is. If you want to really excel, think about where can you shine? Where is there a space for you? Where is there a gap that you can fill? I did exactly the same thing when I built my barbershop. On an earlier podcast episode, I talked about it. Where everybody was running to where all the other barbershops were, I went and found a space where there were no barbershops, but my targeted demographic was there. This is what I live by in business. And when you live that way without even knowing it, you'll start doing these things subconsciously. Because when I was posting, to be honest, during lockdown, I wasn't thinking that all the other barbers weren't going to post. When I set up the website, I wasn't thinking about the idea that, no one else has a website. But when you're operating in this way, you just find that you sometimes do it consciously and sometimes subconsciously. Just finding the gaps. I knew during lockdown that nobody was doing anything. So for me, I should be posting content. But then all the other barbers, I guess, didn't really know what to post. They weren't really thinking about it. So those are just two major things that happened in my career that really took our business and elevated it in a short space of time. Well, not a short space of time, but like where there are moments where you're like, right, at that moment, I saw everything change. Let me change that. Everything didn't change. I saw everything speed up because I was already a busy barber back then, but I saw everything speed up. The shop was already busy at the time, but I saw everything speed up. I saw everything elevate. So it didn't change. It was still going in the same direction that we were always going in, but it elevated and sped up. So my advice to you barbers out there is find a gap and fill it. If anything ever happens where for some reason attention drops because people in your industry are not doing anything, that's the time for you to shine. If there's anything that happens right now within the barber industry and you're like, actually, everybody's over there doing that, but nobody's doing this, do it. I've given you 2 examples, but there'll be plenty of things. Well, I gave you a third example as well with the barbershop, but there'll be plenty of things that you probably could, if you sat down and just thought about it and said, okay, I want to do this, I want to do that, I want to do this, I want to do that. Okay, there are loads of people over here, but the barbers aren't showing up there. That could be location, that could be doing pop-up shops, that could be you jumping in a van and saying, look, I'm going to do a bunch of pop-up shops in parks. I've given you an idea. Or I'm just going to pull up to parks on a hot day with my chair, my cordless clippers, and give out haircuts. That's another idea. You don't always have to follow the crowd. Following the crowd, to make it very clear again, there's nothing wrong with it. Jump on the trends, do all the things there, but also think outside of the box. If you really want to grow and have some success. No, I changed that. Not some success, have major success. This has been another episode of the SliderCuts Barber Business Podcast, where I talk all things barbering, business, and in between. And if you enjoy these conversations, then, subscribe to my channel, leave a comment letting me know. And I have started a barber-focused community group. If you're interested, you're a barber, you want to grow your business, you want to have more conversations, you want to have more deeper conversations like this, where I'll be going through these things to you, breaking it down, how to do it, giving you ideas, answering your questions, then click the link in the description. Thanks for tuning in.